Just want to do one example with you, and I'm going to actually do it two ways. Once completing the square because that's my preference. The second time using the quadratic formula because some of you prefer that. But I want to talk about the differences and why I prefer completing the square so often. So here we go. I have x squared minus 4x plus 7 equals 0. This is ideal for completing the square because a is 1. I do not need to divide through by anything. And b is even, so when I do half b, I'll stay with a nice number. I won't end up with fractions. So the first way I'm going to show you how to solve this is by completing the square. Now, I should backtrack a minute and say I always try to factor first. But here there are no numbers that multiply to 7 and add to negative 4, so it's not going to help me. Alright, so when I complete the square on this, I'm going to move the c term out of the way. So x squared minus 4x is negative 7. I make my b list. B is negative 4. Half of that is negative 2. And when I square half b, I get positive 4. So we add the half b squared term to both sides. X squared minus 4x plus 4 equals negative 7 plus 4. My left side is now a perfect square trinomial. I write it that way, using half b. So x minus 2 all squared is negative 7 plus 4, negative 3. We undo squaring by square rooting. So when I square root a squared, they cancel. I have x minus 2 equals, I need two answers, fundamental theorem of algebra. I have a squared term, I must have two answers. So that's why I need plus or minus the square root of negative 3. Now we can finish up, get x alone by adding 2 to both sides, and now use what we learned the other day about negatives under the square root. The square root of negative 1 is I, so I bring that out as I, and I cannot square root 3, so I leave it alone. So when I complete the square, I get 2 plus or minus I root 3. There are my two answers. 2 plus I root 3 and 2 minus I root 3. So when we use the quadratic formula, we better get the same answer. Well, the quadratic formula, your favorite math song, x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So here we go. X equals the negative value of b, and negative 4 is 4, plus or minus the square root of b squared, negative 4 all squared is 16, minus 4 times a is 1 times c is 7. All over 2 times a, 2 times 1 is 2. Now we'll start cleaning it up. X is 4 plus or minus the square root of 16. Negative 4 times 1 is negative 4. Negative 4 times positive 7 is negative 28. All over 2. Okay, so I have x equals 4 plus or minus the square root of 16 minus 28 is going to be a negative number, and that is 12 all over 2. Now I need to simplify that square root. Well, right away I'm going to pull that negative out as I, and then 12 is 4 times 3. 4 is a perfect square. The square root of 4 is 2. So I have I times 2, or 2i, times the square root of 3, all over 2. You need to divide 2 into all coefficient parts. 4 divided by 2 is 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. So I have 2 plus or minus 1i root 3. Which is exactly what I got when I completed the square. However, here's why I prefer completing the square over the quadratic formula, especially when the setup's so nice. A is 1 and b is even. There are a lot of places to make mistakes with the quadratic formula. Oftentimes people miss this negative minus 4ac and get the bad sign inside, or a wrong sign inside. Also, once I've gotten the right answer, or the right number underneath my square root, now you have to often simplify a square root. When I completed the square, I did not have to simplify that square root. And you have to simplify square roots much less often when you complete the square versus with the quadratic formula. The quadratic formula took me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps. Completing the square took me 1, 2, 3, 4. Same numbers were littler and easier to handle, and I have less chances of making mistakes with completing the square. So I'm not going to tell you how to solve quadratics, but I'm going to strongly suggest when A is 1 and B is even that you complete the square and you're less likely to make mistakes. And that's it. Nothing new today really, just pulling it all together.